Hello, everyone. It's Pastor Seth, and I will be talking about our January 7th reading. And today our reading is Genesis 21, starting in verse 8, and then we end all the way through Genesis 24. Now, as Pastor Steve has already said, this is a narrative literature, and so this isn't a go, thou shalt listen and do what this says. This is a glimpse, a snapshot of the normal life of these people. And so in the first section, we get this relational drama, and it's a result of disobedience and distrust of God, that God wouldn't fulfill what he had promised. God had promised them that they would have a son, and yet even in that promise, Abraham hedged his bets and said, hey, why don't you lie about who you are? You're not my wife, you are my sister. And then Sarah says, God's taking too long, in essence. Why don't you sleep with my servant Hagar and have a child through her, so that you can have this inheritance. This son can become a great nation. And so we have right here a culmination of the consequences of those decisions. And Ishmael is making fun of Isaac, and Sarah says, get rid of this servant girl Hagar and her son. They are not going to be a part of this inheritance. And this made Abraham very angry. But God says, go ahead, Abraham, listen to your wife. I will make him a great nation as well. And this shows us that God works even in the midst of our mistakes, even in the midst of our disobedience, that he is faithful and will work all things for his glory. And so he does that through Ishmael. And we see this wonderful interaction between Hagar and the angel of God. And as Pastor Steve said last week, when we see the angel of God, we think that it might be a Christophany or a picture of Jesus appearing before he is incarnate as a human. And so he says, do not be afraid, Hagar. I will make your son a great nation as well, and he'll have many descendants. And then God miraculously provides for her in the wilderness. Well, then we also see more relational drama coming through Abimelech and Abraham. Abimelech comes and says, let's have a treaty together. And Abraham says, sure, let's do it. Also, your people forcefully took this well from us. And Abimelech said, I've never heard of this. Why didn't you tell me about this? And this shows us that even then that there was miscommunications and misunderstandings that would happen. And it's a picture that we all make mistakes as well. And Abraham maybe made an assumption that Abimelech knew these things. And we make assumptions all the time. And so this is an example of a lesson we can learn through Abraham, that we can sometimes assume things that we don't know is actually true, or people don't know that what's going on. Well, next we have this example of Abraham's faith being tested. He is told by God to go sacrifice your son that I promised you. And Abraham does it. He goes up on this mountain with his son, and his son says, Isaac says, where is the sheep that we're going to sacrifice? And Abraham said, God will provide this. And so they get up there, and Abraham ties Isaac to the wood and is about to kill him when God stops Abraham and essentially says, now I know that you trust me. Before you didn't trust me, but now I have shown myself faithful, and you have shown yourself to trust me. And we see a wonderful picture of God's provision through providing another sheep in place of his son. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But then we have some interesting interactions with the elders of this area, of the Hittites, and they go do a normal transaction where they go to the elders of the town and try to make a transaction that works. And then we have another interesting narrative of Abraham sending his servant to go find a wife for for Isaac in Rebekah. And again, this is a narrative structure. It's not something where God tells us that we need to go and do this, because the prayer that his servant prays is, hey, God, do these three things and I'll know that you're there. And God doesn't ask us to do that. And God never has told us that you get this checklist of things and then you can follow me. No, he's not a vending machine where you do the right things and then things happen, or we can follow him when these three things are fulfilled. And so we see that God did help lead him to Rebekah, and Rebekah went with him. Now, when I read scriptures, I always want to focus on where Jesus is. And where I see Jesus in this scripture is in Abraham going to sacrifice Isaac. Now, what we see is a picture of what Jesus is going to do. That he is going to take wood up Calvary, and he is going to be tied up. And instead of God stopping the hand of Abraham, he doesn't stop the hand of the people who are sacrificing Jesus. And instead, Jesus is sacrificed on the cross as the lamb who was slain. Then God provided another lamb. He provided someone else to take the penalty that we deserve, that we should have paid. And yet, like God provided a sheep or a ram for Abraham, God provided Jesus for us, that we may be free in him. I hope you enjoyed this reading today. God bless you.